of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan of Motor City Madmouth, and what a great show we have lined up today. And I want to introduce my guys here, Rick Curdy and Lou Landers. And you know what, Lou? I'm going to turn it over to you and let the audience know exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. Go ahead, Lou.
Well, we got a lot of stuff to talk about here. We're going to talk about some interesting potential things happening in Miami with maybe a manager change. Who knows? Because the contract's coming up for Don Mattingly. So I'll come back to you on that in a moment. We have Big Poppy in the Hall of Fame and the steroids and a whole bunch of stuff surrounding that and who else maybe should be getting in if Ortiz is getting in. And main topic here tonight is going to be the needs for the National League contenders heading in to the trade deadline, which is just under a week away now. A week today, but in the afternoon, of course, we record in the evenings. Before I turn it back over to Scott, Rick, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am excellent. I'm just excited to talk about all this great stuff here tonight. So, Scott, Don Mattingly's contract up at the end of the year. Marlins, not a team that likes to spend a lot of money. Rumors floating around they might be trading some of their current good solid pieces, knowing playoffs probably out of reach for them. Do you think that could deter Mattingly wanting to come back to Miami? Because we know he's going to get a job somewhere. Hell of a manager, a number of openings already look to be the case for next year. Will he be a Marlin next year? Will he be running that team?
I would like to hope and pray that he does because I have a great working relationship with Don Mattingly. Every time I've asked him questions, he's been very honest, sincere, and more importantly, he's intelligent. Now, getting back to your point, though, Lou, let's face the reality. Does he want to continue a nonstop rebuilding show? No, any more than anybody that's ever watched Welcome Back, Kotter wants to see the Sweat Hogs in high school forever. So, no, I don't think Don Mattingly wants to be a sweat hog in Miami playing in front of 15,000 people day in and day out. So, Pablo Lopez to me appears to be a guy who likely can be moved at the deadline. That's a name that's being bannered around. I don't see Jazz Chisholm going anywhere. I've heard Garrett Cooper is a name, and yet you have two of the three, are all-stars. It's how often do the Miami Marlins have three all-stars? Well, they did this time. Jazz didn't play because of a back injury. And Sandy Alcantara, I think if it were anybody else, where Bud L.A., he would have been the starter, but he had a clean inning nonetheless. Garrett Cooper got in. So, but to answer your question, it makes me wonder whether or not he will. I don't think he wants to be in a lifelong rebuilding. He's too good of a manager than to be down here, and they'll talk it shop probably at the end of the year, but I hope he stays. But do I think he will? Well, I don't know. To me, it's a coin toss, 50-50. And I'll give you two places that I think he could wind up. One would be the LA Angels. Put Don Mattingly in that situation with some of the talent you have there and his coaches. I think the Angels turn it around quickly. And of course, I wouldn't rule out the Toronto Blue Jays, a team that's ready-made team that can win. And please give Don some talent, would you? I mean, I know he's a good manager. He's a really good manager. And, I have a Hydrostone statue that I got from Cooperstown. I'd like to see that thing increase in money. Maybe not, but to me, I'd like to see Don Mattingly here, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, the Angels are an interesting team because we know they're going to be bringing in a new manager and they have money, but they're arguably further away from competing than the Marlins are. So I'm not sure that destination is all that interesting to him. A team like the Blue Jays you brought up could be very interesting. That's where I would suspect, but right now they have an interim manager in there. If the Jays have a great second half like we expect them to, and they maybe win a playoff series or make an October run, he probably has a good chance of being named the full-time manager. So that could rule them out. But if they're looking for a manager, certainly a really good spot. I don't know if he'd ever go to Boston because of his Yankees ties, but Alex Cora might be on his way out after the Red Sox collapse recently. So that's something else to consider. Would Mattingly ever manage in Boston after all his Yankee ties? That's something interesting. What do you think of that, Rick?
That would be interesting. I'm from Los Angeles. I would love for him to come to the Angels. I mean, Phil Nevin stinks. He needs to go. They're terrible. They're dumping everything on Madden. Well, obviously it wasn't Madden who was the problem. If Mattingly goes there with a owner that likes to spend money and a lot of money, I could see him going there. Blue Jays is a very interesting one. I think one I'm looking out at, and I don't think Tony La Russa is coming back. I think he's going to retire. I could see Mattingly possibly going to the White Sox. I mean, he is a player's manager, and they're not listening to Tony La Russa. That strict disciplinarian stuff ain't working there, and they need a laid back player manager like Manley who people respect. I could possibly see him going to the White Sox.
That
Well,
might be the best fit of them all, to be honest, Rick, because they're a team that, like the Blue Jays, that's ready to win now and clearly aren't getting the right leadership there. And again, I think we've talked about it a number of times. Ryan Dorf is not going to fire La Russa, so they're basically stuck with La Russa for the rest of the year. Whether they get into the playoffs or not, they'll be returning a huge core of that team. And Mattingly going in there certainly would be a big boost for them. Scott, you were going to come in and say something. What do you got?
Yeah,
here?
as a matter of fact, that's an interesting thing. First of all, the last thing the Marlins fans want to do is see that we have another fire sale because they've been subjected to enough of them. But Rick, I'm glad you brought up the Chicago White Sox. He's a Midwestern guy anyways. I believe he's from Evansville, Indiana, actually from the Indiana area. So
Yeah.
He'd be returning to the Midwest. He's the most easygoing guy. He'll bring a good coaching staff. And I agree with you guys. I think the White Sox, to me, is an interesting destination for him, being from the Midwest with a team that is able to win. And I think with Don, I will say this. I recently did an interview with Tommy Hutton, and Tommy Hutton told me, Lou and Rick, that if you can't play for Don Mattingly, you can't play for anybody. And that when Tommy Hutton talks, people listen. Okay, I mean, we're not talking to you, Hutton, we're talking Tommy Hutton. Okay, because Tommy Hutton, to me, is a voice of the Marlins, and he's been around and he knows this organization better. So, yeah, Rick, I'm glad you brought the White Sox up, and I think Tony La Russa's days are definitely numbered. Go ahead, Lou.
Yes, they definitely are. So we'll move things over from Mattingly and the Marlins, and we will come back to the National League. We've got a lot to talk about on the National League. But before we do that, some just other news around the sport of Major League Baseball with David Ortiz's Hall of Fame enshrinement happening very recently. And there's good and there's bad here. I mean, Ortiz put together a great career. I'll give him that. Clutch hitter, multiple-time world champion, was on that Red Sox 04 team that broke the curse. So, I mean, you give the guy credit for his career, but again, depends where your stance is on steroids. I have no problem with guys who were accused or found to be using them getting into the Hall of Fame. My problem is they need to let them all in or none of them in. And they've been very, 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 very specific on who they've let in who've been tied to those so-called performance-enhancing drugs. Ortiz being one of those guys that has gotten in. So, Rick, I know you have lots to say on this. I'll start with you. Firstly, talk to me about Ortiz, but then also all the other guys who are in the same boat as him, maybe even had better careers than him, not taking anything away from him, who are not in and should be.
Yeah, I mean, David Ortiz is a great player, but he was on that list, the same list that A-Rod was on. So how is he getting in the Hall of Fame? And yet Bonds and Clemens and A-Rod, all first ballot Hall of Famers. If it wasn't for the steroids, they'd be in easily. And so how can you put a guy that is on a PED list and yet, but why? Because he's likable, because he's a nice guy, because he's funny and a colorful character. I mean, it's just screams hypocrisy by MLB, and I'm so upset with them that they let David Ortiz in, who's tested positive for PED. Wasn't, like people have been getting mad at Bagwell and Piazza. Oh, I think they were on steroids. Well, there's no proof. We have proof that David Ortiz was taking steroids, and he was on that list, and how he got in is just, it's wrong, and it's not right. And there's so many players out there that should be in the Hall of Fame. And I've been saying this for many years, and I'll say this to my grave. Fred McGriff needs to get into the Hall of Fame. This guy was a great player. He played great in both leagues, won home run titles in both leagues, great underrated first baseman. No scandals, never been connected with PED. How he's not in the Hall of Fame is beyond me, and yet they let a steroid user cheater like David Ortiz. So put them all in. Put Bonds in. They all need to go in if you're going to put David Ortiz in. So this was not I'm not very happy with it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And firstly, I will say Fred McGriff, definitely deserving, definitely a Hall of Fame career. But to the steroid guys specifically, because that's where this really has, I think, the most steam here. If Ortiz is going to be allowed in, and steroids or not, Hall of Fame career. We can't argue the fact that he had a Hall of Fame career because he did, but so did the aforementioned Bonds and McGuire and Sosa and A-Rod and Clemens. And what do all those guys have in common that David Ortiz doesn't have? They're not likable people, specifically Bonds, A-Rod, and Clemens. Nobody likes those guys. And Curt Schilling can be on that list too. Curt Schilling's a guy that arguably should be in the Hall of Fame. No, not a likable guy. Doesn't agree with certain political ways. He's not in the Hall of Fame. So it's certainly a trend we're seeing. And it just goes back to nothing against Ortiz even, because for me, I'm okay with the whole steroid era being in. It was a whole era of baseball that you're going to try and cancel out. Doesn't make sense. And everyone was doing it. When I say everyone, obviously 100% of the players weren't doing it, but there was tons of people doing it who weren't at the Hall of Fame level, who didn't become superstars because they were doing it. It was just the thing that was happening during that time. So to erase it from history is just stupid. But if you're going to let one in, you got to let them all in. Another guy we didn't mention, Manny Ramirez, to me, one of the greatest pure hitters of my generation, a teammate of David Ortiz. Hall of Fame type of career, certainly offensively, not a likable guy, linked to his PEDs. And what happened? He's not in the Hall of Fame. Scott, what do you got here?
Oh, I got plenty, and you guys do a great job setting me up. All right, so let me just go through the checklist. Number one, Ivan Rodriguez was suspected of it. He's in. Mike Piazza is another guy you probably wonder about. Did he get in? Okay, so there's some question marks there. Let's go down the list, though. Definitely Barry Bonds, not a likable guy. PR killed him. Nobody wanted anything to do with him when they went out there. And, he got his home run record. Nobody bothered. Roger Clemens, I definitely think if you're going to let Ortiz in, you have to. Plus, he's a big part of it. He started his career with Boston. He won a few rings. Alex Rodriguez, another guy, like you say, they don't like him either. Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, to me, saved the game of baseball. They did. During 1994, you want to blame these guys for PEDs? Go ahead and do it. You want to pick on Sammy for a cork bat? Do it. But when baseball was practically dead, and I mean practically dead, that home run chase between McGwire and Sosa, to me, saved the game in addition to Cal Ripken Jr.'s consecutive game streak. So those guys should be in. Now, again, I'm definitely all for Fred McGriff being in there. And I'll even throw a couple more names on there that should be in there now that Jim Cott's in there as well.
How about Don Mattingly, one we already talked about here
tonight?
Well,
I've done that. I'll be talking to my grave about him. Then again, I won't, because I'll be buried in a concrete nap, not below ground, but upstairs. They call it a concrete nap. But yeah, I'll put Mattingly in there. But I would say Lou Whitaker should be in there, and I'll even put Mickey Lolich in there, because Mickey Lolich knows what the word complete game is, and I've talked to Mickey. He's my idol. And how many times can you see a guy win 3 games in the World Series against a high-powered St. Louis Cardinal team? So let me go through the list again. Clemens, yes. Now, because after all, I'm going to Cooperstown next week anyways. I'm going to see if Ortiz is black. Alex Rodriguez, well, at least the writers can still vote him in. Alex Rodriguez, as I just said, we'll see. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa off the ballot. And, of course, we'll talk about Fred McGriff. And I think he probably will get in now. I think his candidacy will go ahead and pick up steam. I think there's a Curt Schilling couldn't keep his mouth shut. That got him into trouble.
It's a politics.
He didn't want to be taken off the ballot. So that's okay. Well, not even
so extreme.
Yeah. And then I think Carlos Beltran, is he able to?
Next year.
Right. He's eligible. I can't wait for Ichiro Suzuki to get in. I can tell you right now, when I was at the Angels and the Marlins game, you're going to have all of Japan in Cooperstown. If Shohei Ohtani was able to put 18,700 people in Marlins Park, I guarantee all of Tokyo and everywhere in Japan you'll have more people for Ichiro Suzuki's Hall of Fame induction. And you know what? If we all know about the Field of Dreams, all those lights back and forth,
They might have to build like stands to help hold all the people that are going to want to go see the Ichiro one. I'm with you there.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that's going to look like. So yeah, we've thrown a lot out there, but I'd love to see Mickey Lolich get in there. But here's the one thing that we're really missing, though, and I know if that's the case, I might as well put Pete Rose in there now, because now you got gambling around all of baseball.
That's the most ridiculous one, because there's literally MLB Network, and every single broadcast is sponsored by some sort of online sports book now.
And of course,
it's widely accepted. So you're gonna still
Right.
punish the guy for it? I mean, give me a break.
And Shields Joe Jackson should be in
Well,
too.
but you know what? I say Rafael Palmeiro will not get in it. If you see my finger and you can see, and this is not an eye test, okay? Rafael Palmeiro, will he get in? I don't know. But if you think my finger is loaded with a lot, you're probably right. If you're on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, and please subscribe so you can see me wagging my finger and talking about Rafael Palmeiro. Okay, back to you, Lou.
Yeah, Palmeiro. Yeah, it's a little less clear than some of the other guys, but there's some guys that we talked about who some of the best players in history, not just of their generation, but in the history of baseball, and they definitely need to be in. And thank you for the reminder, Scott. I do want to mention everyone should subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel. Of course, you can also visit www.southfloridatribune.com and follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. You can advertise as well with us. Call 954-304-4941. Audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, etc., wherever you get your podcasts. Now to the meat of the show, fellas.
Well, here I want to mention one more thing. I'm
not
gonna
to the meat of the show yet.
Oh well, whatever. I am always going to be a Sammy Sosa guy because I worked with a guy in 1987 for the Gastonia Rangers, and Sammy to me were buds. And I'll never forget the time I was over with the Marlins and getting a one-on-one interview after I let the Cubbies PR lady know I did your job back in '87. Sammy said, "Yeah, he did." Got the one-on-one. So yeah, I'm a Sammy Sosa. Get Sammy in there. All right, go.
Yeah, I love me some slamming Sammy. So National League contenders. We did the American League a few weeks ago. Things definitely heating up in both leagues. Trade deadline a week away. Teams revving up for that postseason run. Going to be a ton of movement in the next 5 to 7 days. And basically here, we're going to break down the needs of all the major contenders. And we'll start from east to west. We'll start with the New York Mets. I would say the Mets could probably use a DH type or an upgrade in the outfield. They have a solid outfield, but maybe a more star-studded bat there or a DH type. Bullpen help, never a problem for anybody. Everyone should be looking to get that bullpen help come playoff time. Mets could be a scary playoff team if they have full strength in their rotation, which kind of brings me to the health of Jacob Degraw. This is really what it comes down to. If Degraw and Scherzer, if they really believe Degraw and Scherzer are going to be healthy, they do not need to address their rotation. Because behind them with Walker, Bassett, Carrasco, it's pretty solid. But without Degraw and Scherzer, you don't stand a chance the same way in the postseason. You need to try and upgrade that starting rotation. And there's a lot of good starters out there. So Mets need to kind of evaluate their own rotation right now, the health of those guys before making a trade, because I think it was Buck Showalter who said it right after the DeGrom injury. It's okay if we miss him. By the time he comes back, it's like making a great trade. Well, that's exactly what it could be like around that same time. So it could be very interesting for the New York Mets to see what they do. Rick, what are your thoughts here? What could the Mets use to increase their chances, not to make the playoffs? I think we know they should be able to get in. Will they hold off the Braves? Yet to be determined. There will be at least a wild card team, though. How do they win in October?
They need to get some pitching because I think DeGrom is done. This guy's had more setbacks and more setbacks. To me, he's like another Strasburg. He's a great player and great pitcher. We know that. When he's on the mound, he's fantastic. But, man, he cannot stay healthy. Every time you think he's coming back, he never comes back. He's had another setback again. I think Scherzer's fine. I think it's just a little, things happen. You get injuries, and he had a real freakish injury. He got bit by his dog or something like that. So, but DeGrom, if I was the Mets, I go for pitching because, if he does come back, is he going to be the same Jacob DeGrom? So, I just think I don't think he can stay healthy. And if I was the Mets, I'd look into getting some pitching.
What do you think, Scott?
Well, I've been believing in Buck Showalter all year anyways, and I'm still believing in Buck Showalter. So I told you that the Mets would still be in first place despite the injury problems. I'm right. Now, you want to talk about an interesting irony, although I don't know if it'll ever happen. Can you imagine if Pablo Lopez made his way to the New York Mets and the Marlins have to see him a couple times a year? Holy moly, but Pablo is an innings eater. He's a heck of a pitcher. He hasn't had a lot of run support. And he's a wild card in all of this trade talk. He really, really is. Where is he going to go? Because he's a difference maker. He's a young innings eater. Is he a Doyle Alexander? No, he's going to last a whole lot longer than Doyle Alexander. But this guy is young, and he'll eat a lot of innings. Would I love to see him with the Mets? Yeah, I think that would be great. Buck will know how to use them.
Interdivision trade like that probably won't happen. Yeah,
No,
I will say, I agree with you, Rick, on the sense that it's been lots of setbacks for Degraw last year into this year and so on. But he's been healthy during his rehab stint. He's expected to make his final rehab start tomorrow. Should surpass 75 to 80 pitches. So could be back with the Mets Sunday or Monday, which, of course, the timing's excellent with the trade deadline being Tuesday. If he gets back, I'm not sure they make a huge splash. Maybe find a back end of the rotation innings eater. If he has a setback, I think all of a sudden they're linked to Luis Castillo, Montas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely interesting. Do you think they should do something offensively? There are a lot of bats out there. In fact, the Red Sox just made JD Martinez available via trade. Fit very nicely in the middle of that Mets lineup, wouldn't it? And they could use a DH type.
Yeah, they need some more pop. They just got a new his name escapes me, from the Pirates. So I mean,
Vogelbach,
yeah. So they're getting some. They need a little bit more pop, But to me, it relies on the pitching, and DeGrom to me is that big question mark. Buck Showalter is a great manager. We all know that. I picked him as my manager of the year right when he got hired. I said they're going to turn it around very quickly, and he did. So to me, he's the complete. Just give him the award already, because to me there's no one close. So, but to me, DeGrom's the question mark. We'll see what happens, because he's gotten healthy. He's been fine, and then boom, he'll get hurt again. Rehab, come back, boom. It's just I'm just not optimistic that he could come back healthy or be the same DeGrom. So we'll see what happens.
Well, Lou, I should point out the Detroit Tigers are making a lot of the year players available too. Tarek Skubal's been mentioned out there, and they got some younger pitchers. At the beginning of the year, they weren't rebuilding, and all of a sudden it looks like things are going the other way. So don't be surprised. And of course, Michael Fulmer, who used to be a starter, is out there. You never know whether or not he'll be moved as well. So
he'll definitely be moved. Expiring contract,
right.
Back end relief pitcher. I would be shocked if he's not moved. The Skubal news did come out today or late last night. A little surprising because he's young and still under team control. But if they can get a good return for him, then why not? So let's move things over to the Atlanta Braves. This is the team that I still think is going to win the National League East. Really made up a ton of ground. At one point, we're a half a game back of the Mets. Now back to 2 games back. Lots of time for them. They have some injuries of their own, of course, as the Mets have. But look at this Braves team. Again, bullpen help, very important. A back-end starter, because we don't know if Mike Soroka is ever coming back, it seems. But you look at this Mets team, Braves team, I should say, unlike the Mets, who could use the offensive upgrade, I'm not sure the Braves do. They really just need Ozzie Albies to come back in late August, early September, and that could be the big boost offensively they need, because they have tons of offense already there with the stars that they have, and Michael Harris just exploding onto the scene, Swanson and Riley and Olsen and Acuna and Eddie Rosario and Ozuna, and just it's loaded.
Yeah, but Adam Duvall, though, is hurt, so he's a guy that hit a lot of home runs, so there might be
last year he did. They haven't relied upon him this year, though. He's having a down season now. He's strictly a platoon player. Sure, they could go out there and maybe find a right-handed hitting outfielder to platoon with Eddie Rosario, but they really don't need anything major offensively the way some of these other teams do. They really just should add to their pitching. And remember, they just got off to a really bad start. They've been one of the best teams in baseball since the end of April or mid-May. So they're not a team that's lacking a lot. Remember, they won last year without Acuna entirely. So, and they lost Morton in the World Series. So they're a team that can win. We know they're kind of proven they've won. Rick, your thoughts on this Braves team? Am I wrong? Do they need offense, or is it just getting some more pitching depth in there?
I would get some more pitching depth, add to the rotation or add to the bullpen. I just think you just need to do little minor tweaks. They're on fire right now. They're playing great. They got off to a dreadful start, but now they've been one of the hottest teams in all of baseball right now. They made a lot of ground up to the Mets, and you got to tip your hat to the Mets. People thought they'd be gone by now, and they've have hold on. So, but if I was the Braves, the offense is great. You're loaded. You got young players, explosiveness. I would just add a little bit more to the bullpen. Just do some minor tweaks. But I think the Braves are in really good hands right now.
Yeah, they definitely are. They're one of those teams in the National League that get into the playoffs and they can beat absolutely anybody, whether they're the 2 seed and East champions, or whether they're the 5 or the 6 seed. I don't think they are worried or scared of anybody. Scott, what do you think on this Braves team?
Well, Brian Snitker, period. Great manager. What else do I have to say? He's a great manager.
Yeah, we probably covered it all. We probably stole all your thunder anyway.
No, actually, sometimes I like it when you guys go back and forth because you know what? It makes my job easier anyways. But I just know that Brian Snitker's a heck of a manager, and he knows how to work with these players. So, yeah, I think you guys did a great job. No big deal.
Well, there is one more team in the NL East, very unlikely to contend for the division, but right there in the thick of the playoff race. I believe coming into tonight, they're only half a game out of the 6th wild card spot. That's the Philadelphia Phillies. They have not had back-end rotation work or quality for years. They have had a terrible bullpen for years. And not only are they still without Bryce Harper, they'll get him back, but probably purely as a DH. Their center field work has been dreadful between Herrera and Vierling. They need a center fielder badly. They need bullpen help, and they need another starter. Even if it's another Kyle Gibson type like they got last year, they need another one. Because this team is good enough to win one of those wild card spots. They're not going to catch the Mets or the Braves. They're not good enough for that. But they could certainly get into the postseason. Scott, what do the Phillies do? Are there any names out there you think they should be going after? Did I nail it on the head? Did I miss something here?
Yeah, you did. You need Sigmund Freud so that he can talk to Nick Castellanos and let him know that they do boo you in Philadelphia and they picked on Santa Claus. So I don't know. It just depends on who's available, what the rentals are, pretty much. You know, we've talked about the pitching problems nonstop with the Phillies and the hitting. You know, again, I think Bryce Harper will be your biggest acquisition when he becomes healthy.
They just don't want to fall too far behind before they get him back.
Yeah, but you're only talking about a half a game, though, Lou.
But they just got swept by the Cubs over the weekend. A really bad team. And if they fall 2.5 or 3.5 back before Harper comes, that's a problem. They have an opportunity to upgrade now, and they should do it.
I'll worry about the 2.5, 3 games, Lou, on August 31st. I will not worry about it on 7/26, okay?
Sure, but right now it's not a problem. To me, center field is huge for them, though.
Right.
I don't think they can continue. They don't even have good defense in center field. They have terrible defense with Schwarber and Castellanos. They need to go out there and bring in a really good defensive center fielder, whether that's Ramon Laureano from the A's, whether that is trying to pry away Brian Reynolds from the Pirates, Ian Happ from the Cubs, whatever it might be, they should be going out there trying to address their center field situation. Bullpen, there's plenty of, because even the bad teams out there have good relievers. Back-end starting pitching, they're not going to end up getting anything great, but maybe even a Martin Perez who's having a nice season in Texas and pending free agent, that could be a nice piece for them. What do you think, Rick?
So, let me ask you this. What would a show be, Rick? I know you'll get a kick out of it. If we can't pick on the Pittsburgh Pirates, sorry, Ralph Williams, sorry, Mark Mancini, that you're a AAA team and that you're going to be sellers for the umpteenth million time. Don't even know what the over-under is. Sorry, Pirates. Love you guys. You treat me great in spring training, wherever. But I have a feeling that, the Pittsburgh Pirates, are going to be big-time sellers, and they'll probably fill a lot of needs around Major League Baseball. Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, the Phillies they've been a mess. They got rid of Girardi. They're playing a lot better now with Robbie Thompson. And if they make the playoffs, Robbie Thompson will be their manager. I mean, that he's done a great job, because he's turned it around. But they need so much help. I mean, you said center fielding, hitting. They just have bad chemistry, so that's just the problem with them. And they play in a brutal, brutal city where they just don't care if you're the home or the road team. They'll just boo you if you play bad. So the Phillies need a lot of help. Definitely in the outfield, it's dreadful. The hitting, they're just so inconsistent. But if they make the playoffs, with the expanded playoffs, I tip my hat off to Robbie Thompson. He should be the manager for the Phillies and just get some pieces, regroup, and just focus on next year. But they make the playoffs, man, that's fantastic for them. Well, they're not going to go very far.
The one thing we can't rule out is the fact that Dave Dombrowski isn't afraid to make trades at the deadline. He has in the past, and he will again. So if he
even shores up their bullpen, they
right,
might be able to get there because Wheeler and Nola up top of that rotation is basically as good as any 1-2 there is.
Right.
And we know they can hit, even with some guys like Castellanos struggling. Bullpen would be the first thing they need, but even a glove first, really good defensive center fielder to help make up for the lack of defense from Castellanos and Schwarber, I think are very important for the Philadelphia Phillies. We'll move things from the East to the Central. We got two contending teams here, both in playoff spots at the moment, both fighting for the third seed in the NL and the Central title. The other one, of course, hoping to stay in the playoff race as a wild card team. We'll start with the Milwaukee Brewers. They need outfield help. They could probably use a second base upgrade. They need bullpen because Hader is starting to fade because of overwork, and they really need to get their starting pitcher Freddie Peralta back. Rick, Milwaukee Brewers probably going to be a playoff team this year, but if they want to make a run in October, they're going to need more than what they currently have.
Yeah, they're like a whole mash unit right now. I mean, they just had injuries, unfortunate things have happened to them. They definitely need to upgrade the pitching. They are going to get into the playoffs, but right now, if they get in, they're not going to get very far. So if I was the Milwaukee Brewers, I definitely would focus on pitching and just shore up the infield more because they're a great team. They just had some unfortunate circumstances with injuries, but they'll get into the playoffs.
Their outfield does kind of stink, though.
Yeah, it does. I mean, they're a walking mash unit right now, and it's just they're just been hit a lot with injuries.
The big rumor I've heard for the Brewers guys is Josh Bell.
Okay.
From Washington Nationals, and that would be a really nice help for their lineup. It wouldn't necessarily move Rowdy Tellez out of the lineup either. He could DH. And then, of course, you could have Bell at first, who would be a defensive upgrade as well. Maybe they get a improvement in the outfield, not necessarily a big bat in the outfield. I don't think they need the starting pitching. They need some bullpen help, like everybody does, and then an outfield bat, and then a big bat in the middle. If not Josh Bell, then maybe his teammate in Washington and Nelson Cruz. They need a big bat presence in the middle of that lineup.
But you know what, Lou? This is where I can see a guy like Michael Fulmer entering the picture. Okay, they again a rental, and they're not afraid to bring on rentals. Once upon a time, they brought in CC.
No, it's better for them to bring in a rental because they're a small market team that doesn't want to spend. They don't have the financial responsibility following the year. Those are the types of players they should be targeting.
Yeah, well, Michael Fulmer, I could see him as an ideal guy. And Nelson Cruz, again, you know what? And I'll tell you, he goes ahead and hits over at Miller Park. This guy will whack him out of there because it is a hitter's park. That's a good. Glad you brought him up.
Well, Nelson Cruz going to the Brewers is kind of what I thought was going to happen in the offseason when Cruz was a free agent. And then all of a sudden Washington comes in and we're all like, why is he going to Washington? Why does Washington even want this guy? They basically got him so that they could have some protection for Soto, which hasn't worked, and then trade him at the deadline. So they'll trade him. Just a matter of where. And Josh Bell certainly would be a better fit because he can play a defensive position. He's a switch hitter and having a better season. But I think they would take Nelson Cruz as a consolation prize. Guys, anything else on the Milwaukee Brewers?
No,
I'll take your silence as no. All right.
No.
St. Louis
Cardinals.
Cardinals.
I'm going to reiterate, though. I think that Michael Fulmer would be the type, and I'm sure there's other guys, but he's the one that comes to my mind a little bit because he's a guy that's worked in a closer role or a setup guy, and he can give you 1 or 2 innings. And a lot of the issues with Josh Hader are a result of that. So Fulmer can give you 1 or 2 because he's a converted starter. And we know that past converted starters in the past, like Dennis Eckersley, John Smoltz, haven't turned out so bad in that role either. So.
No, they haven't. And let's also face it, Brewers, without any long-term ties to Fulmer, won't be afraid to just throw him out there and get the absolute most out of his arms. They're not worried about how it affects him later down the road. They're going to get as much out of him as possible.
That's true because the Yankees, the Cubs did that to Aroldis Chapman. They didn't care if they ran him out there to the Wolves. They were going to get that title, and they did, and it worked. So that's a great point.
Yeah, they have Devin Williams, who's a great reliever. Hader is awesome, but they need to try to not have him pitch as often as he is. So if you can add another arm like that, like a Fulmer would be perfect. Of course, interdivisional, there's David Robertson, there's Michael Givens from the Cubs. There's a couple guys on the Reds, not as highly touted, but Hunter Strickland has been there, kind of done that. So those are just some options for sure. But Milwaukee should be a playoff team. It's just how can they advance in October, and can they? And right now, I don't think they would. St. Louis Cardinals are a team that could certainly advance in October. They were playing great baseball. They've kind of come back down to earth a little bit. They are now 2 games back of the Brewers. They are only a 1 game or half a game, I should say, up on the Phillies. I said that earlier. And they are 2.5 behind the Padres, it looks like. So their best chance, obviously, is the division. And after that, they're probably looking at the 6th wild card spot. This is a team that could definitely use some bullpen help, but I really think the biggest thing for them is a back-end rotation piece because Steven Matz continues to go up and down. He's injured a lot. They haven't gotten anything from Jack Flaherty because of his injuries. As much as I love Adam Wainwright is getting up there in age. He's not nearly as reliable as he used to be. Matthew Liberatore's a rookie. They need some rotation help in St. Louis, and they could definitely use another big bat in that lineup. What do you think, Scott?
I'll go along with what you say with the Cardinals. I think their best chance is actually winning the division because everybody else is just too good. So, yeah, either win the division or not at all. So that's all I have to say. I don't always have to have a elaborate answer because I got a few other things that I've been watching you on social media that I will address as this broadcast continues. So, but no, I think the Cardinals have to win the division or else, period.
Also, I will say this. They are one of the teams favored to potentially land Juan Soto from the Washington
Boy,
Nationals.
you steal my thunder, my friend.
Yes.
And I know that there's going to be a Juan Soto mention here because I know we haven't addressed it with you in the last week or two, but we will do it. So hang in there, folks.
Yes.
Juan Soto is on deck.
Yes, he is coming up on one of those NL West teams for sure, but Cardinals are in on him. That would be their outfielder DH type that they need, but they would still need a back-end rotation piece. And acquiring Patrick Corbin in that deal does not count as a back-end rotation piece because Patrick Corbin has not been good since 2019. Rick, St. Louis Cardinals, bullpen's pretty good. Could they use an upgrade? Sure, everyone can, as we always say, but that back end of the rotation is weak and not consistent in their lineup right now either.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you said. You know, they need some help in that rotation and things like that. They have to win the division. Everyone else is good. They get in a wild card. Right now, they're not going to go very far. So they've done really good. You know, they started out bad. They went red hot. They cooled off a little bit. Goldschmidt was playing out of his mind.
Keep in mind this, though, guys. Just keep this in mind. Based on the format, if the Cardinals or Brewers, one of them wins the division and the other one is the final wildcard team, they face each other in round 1. Either one of those teams could beat the other one. So one of those NL Central teams really do have a good chance of advancing past round 1. Then, of course, they'd probably get ousted by the Dodgers or the Mets or Braves, whoever wins that East. But the way things are shaping up currently, that would be the matchup, would be the 3-seeded Central versus the 6-seed wildcard team. So keep that in mind.
That would be a good series. That would be an interesting series. You know, they're very evenly matched. They're both in the Midwest. You know, they have a long tradition. That would be a great series. So I kind of would like to see that series.
It would be because it would also mean that the loser of the NL East race would probably play the Padres, and that would be a hell of a series too.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Really good stuff. So we'll move things over to the NL West. Dodgers look to be in full command, an 11.5 game lead over the San Diego Padres. And that's nothing against the Padres. Padres 10 games over, 54-44, having a good season. Dodgers just cruising right now. Could they use another starter? I mean, maybe because they don't have Walker Buehler right now, but they're getting more than we could have expected from their rotation. Bullpen help, paramount. Trinan, injury. Hudson, injury. Craig Kimbrell, sometimes he's excellent, sometimes he's not. So bullpen help is a must for the Dodgers. And then I think maybe a utility player, maybe like a Brandon Drury, who's having a really nice season with the Reds. Guy who kind of play all over the place. I think he would kind of be the perfect fit for the Dodgers because they don't need much. Rick, you're a Dodgers fan. You look at this team right now, there's not really a real weakness. there's just kind of some holes that need to be filled, similar to the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, they definitely need to do something with the bullpen. That's if they don't win it all, and I have them winning it all. If they don't win it all, that's going to be their Achilles heel. They need to do something with that bullpen. Just shore it up, get some players out there. I know Pirates going to be selling, and we all know Nationals, and we all know Reds. All these teams are not in contention, trying to look into the future for the rebuild. So, they get some pieces from those teams and shore up that bullpen. They'll be fine because their offense is explosive. They're going to win the division with no doubt about it. Mookie Betts is a MVP candidate in my book for the National League. So they just needed to get that bullpen tweaked up and get stronger, because if they don't, that's going to be their Achilles heel heading into the playoffs.
It certainly could be. And I mean, I wouldn't object to them getting another bat. Don't get me wrong. Right. Or a big name, because there are some big name players out there. Maybe they try to unload Cody Bellinger to somebody, because it's not like he's helping them offensively right now either. Max Muncy has just been dealing with an injury all year. They should have gone surgery for. So they actually have a lot of underperforming players, the Dodgers, and are still absolutely crushing it. So they're a really interesting team to watch, because of course they're going to be linked to all the studs like the Castillos, the Mollys, the Montazes. I'm sure if Scooble's made available, they'll be linked to him. If Pablo Lopez is available, they'll be linked to him. The Yankees, they're always linked to everybody. That's just the way it is. It sells papers if people still buy papers, but it makes headlines for sure. Scott, anything on the Dodgers?
No, you guys are doing a good job. I thought about Scooble and Lopez going out to LA. I do. And David Price, my question to you, do you think he'll be much of a factor with the Dodgers? What's his status?
I mean, he's going to be a relief guy. It can be effective at times. Not someone they're necessarily relying upon, and certainly don't want to have to rely upon. Another interesting one that just came to my mind is, I know he's not what he once was, but Noah Syndergaard, he's going to be available. The Angels have him on a 1-year deal. They're not going anywhere. As a number 1 or 2, I guess number 2, because Ohtani's number 1 there, he's not so good. As a number 5 on a playoff team with good defense and good offense behind him, Noah Syndergaard could deliver some quality innings down the stretch for the Dodgers.
That would be really interesting, yeah, because he's like, it hasn't worked out for the Angels. Angels ain't going nowhere. I can see the Angels getting rid of him.
It shouldn't cost much either.
The Dodgers, he'll be. He's a gamble.
It's a rental.
Why not take that gamble?
It's a rental, and he can give them 5+ innings every start. Even if they don't use him as a starter in the playoffs, when Buehler comes back, he can kind of eat some innings and save the arms of some of the guys that haven't.
Yeah, he's a fill-in piece. You'll get him for nothing. You're taking a gamble, and he could, if maybe he can come back and be the Cindergard of the Mets, or who, we don't know. So
yeah, no one goes to the Angels and has success as a pitcher. So I'm not going to judge Cindergard on what he's doing now. I'm going to judge him based on what he's doing somewhere else. The further he gets removed from his surgeries too, usually the stronger these guys get. So I think it would be a nice little gamble. And it was just one guy that kind of came to mind as someone who's kind of flying under the radar, because everyone is so focused on Montas, Molly, and Castillo right now. Scott, you look like you have something to say, or you're
I always have something to say, but I picked on the Pittsburgh Pirates earlier. So when you're looking for a guy at this time of the year, just go
Quintana.
Go to the Oakland A's. I'm sure they'll have a player or two that they can ship out there.
Yeah, well, Montas for sure. There's been rumors of maybe Blackburn. They have Trevino in the bullpen. But Jose Quintana is a guy that's probably going to be moved. Another guy that I wouldn't trust in October. The other guy I think is pitching way over his head, but an innings eater. Guy who will give you length, and he's having a good season. So the Pirates are definitely going to be looking to move him. Moving things over to the San Diego Padres. So they need bullpen help. Everyone does. They definitely need help in the outfield. It has been just dreadful this year with Profar and Mazzara, Grisham having an awful year, Will Myers injuries. Still without Tatis Jr., of course. He will be back hopefully for them, and that's going to be a big get. They should also probably look to replace the first base, because Eric Hosmer is just not a good hitter anymore. So Padres, as good as they've been, do have a lot of holes to fill, and they can fill them very quickly because they have elite young major league ready talent and a really good farm system too. They're the team who I predict is going to make a play for Juan Soto. If not Juan Soto, I do think Josh Bell, like with the Brewers, is a really good fit. But Juan Soto to me is perfect there. You get Juan Soto to a team that already has Machado and Tatis. That 1-2-3 is unbelievable. He gives them strength in the outfield, which they need. They're a team that has not been afraid to extend players and spend big time money so they could extend him. They're ready to try and win now. And they have they have not only the prospects with the Hassel and Ruiz, CJ Abrams, who's already in the big leagues, Mackenzie Gore, Grisham. They could send 5 players over to Washington, revamp that whole organization for Washington, and get themselves one of the best players in the world. To me, Juan Soto to San Diego is something that should happen, and they'd still have enough pieces to go out there and get some bullpen help and maybe get a first baseman to replace a guy like Eric Hosmer. So San Diego, a really interesting team to watch, especially with the starting pitching that they have. They may not win their division, but they don't have to play a wild card game anymore. They could run the table in the National League. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, definitely. Soto, the Padres and the Cardinals are the 2 teams I'm hearing that are the 2 big favorites to land him. And they got, all those great prospects down in AAA. And I agree, he would be perfect for them. They need something. They need that big explosive bat. Tatis, hopefully this is just a fluke, but when he's healthy and playing, he's one of the best in all of baseball. And can you imagine him and Soto together? They would make a fantastic duo. And you got a great
imagine that
Bob
2-3-4 or 1-2-3 in that lineup. However, they want to do it with Tatis, Soto, Machado. That doesn't get better than that, man.
I mean, and you got Bob Melvin there, who's such a fantastic manager there. I think they wouldn't even be where they're at without Bob Melvin, because they have been injured and Hosmer's not playing good and outfield's not good, and they need to strengthen up that bullpen. So they're going to go all in for Soto, and that would be great for them to do that. And that'd be some fun with the Dodgers, because I know the Dodgers probably would like to get him, but I see the
I think
Padres
everyone would
there.
love to have him. It's just a matter of them actually making sense for them to get him, or having the prospects to do it. Because I think every team, including the Nationals, who are trying to trade him, would love to have him. I made a joke today to someone who commented on my post. There's more than just the teams in Major League Baseball that want him. You take any pro team in any pro league in any country, they'd want to have Juan Soto right now.
Of course.
So, the biggest fish there is Juan Soto.
I mean, he turned down $440 million. What does that tell you? That he don't want to be with the Nationals? I don't blame him, because they're not a good team, and he doesn't want to be stuck with a bad team for 12 years. So he needs to go to a contender.
They have
the Padres are definitely a contender.
absolutely nothing in the farm system either right now. They're a bottom 5 farm team. I think they have the worst record in the league. Plus that, why does he want to be there? And the beautiful part is he's already accomplished a lot there. He's just 23 years old.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they keep focusing on having a down year. Well, sometimes that happens when you're in the last year and you don't know where you're going. And some people do. I mean, look at Judge. He's a free agent. He's playing out of his mind, and some people struggle, and he's just struggling. But he's a young guy.
Yeah, he's struggling batting average wise, but he still has a lead on base percentage. The power's there. There's not a lot of help around him to drive him in, or for him to drive them in either.
I think he's just miserable there right now, and I think that has a lot to do.
But if this is his down season, if this is the down season for Juan Soto, sign me up, man.
Yeah,
like, dude is just ridiculous. He's unfreaking believable. Scott, anything on this Padres team?
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
Soto?
plenty. I've been watching your social media posts on Soto going to San Diego, and I've agreed with every last one of them. Item number one, ownership situation in Washington is in flux. Item number 2, Scott Boras is the agent, $440 million. He's targeting 500. And there's no question. And item number 3, the Padres have been to the World Series twice and have lost to the Detroit Tigers back in, 1984? And in fact, I think they're playing tonight, by the way. I don't know what the score is on that. And then they lost to the Yankees when Tony Gwynn was there. So the reality is San Diego does have the money to play around with, and they're not afraid to dole it out. They really aren't. They're the only game in town in San Diego. So would I like to see them go ahead and get them? Yeah, I think they're. Do they have the capital to do it? You bet. Yeah, no, I think if there's a no-brainer out there during this whole trade deadline thing, that I definitely believe that Juan Soto should be visiting La Jolla anytime now. Okay, great place to go if you've never been there before.
Beautiful San Diego.
And, right, and and Petco Park, never been there. I went to old Jack Murphy Stadium before, but nevertheless, okay, I would, if I were Juan Soto, I would go ahead and start looking for a place in San Diego. Although go to La Jolla, it's a heck of a place. Yeah,
Beautiful city for sure. When I was living in Los Angeles, I'd make my way San Diego as often as I could. Beautiful beaches, beautiful weather, fantastic food, everything you could want. I did see a Chargers game when they were still San Diego. I didn't see a Padres game though. I would have liked to. And also, if you're Scott Boras, to add to what you said, Scott, and I've already said it, but from a agent standpoint, you can sell the fact that over the next decade or so, you could have Soto, Machado, and Tatis. That team's buying into that. And you know what? Even if they can't extend Soto, 3 years, 3 playoff runs with Soto this year and then the next 2 full seasons is enough. If they really want to go for it, that's enough for me. If they can extend it, then great. But a team like the Padres is the type of team that should make that gamble anyway in trying to acquire him, even if it's just for the 2.5 years, and deal with the aftermath after that.
Yeah, but I don't see that coming to that. Remember, everybody thought Carlos Correa, was going to get a massive contract. And where did he land of all places? The Minnesota Twins, and took a short-term deal. No, if Soto goes there, in fact, I'll use a hockey reference, okay? And I know you're a hockey guy. Okay, what are your thoughts about the Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar trade over to Calgary for Matt Tkachuk? Okay,
I thought it was terrible.
Right. For who?
For Florida.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I don't care about them anyways. But my point is the fact that Matthew Tkachuk signed a long-term deal to play here. No state income tax, beautiful palm trees, thinks he can win here. But that thing called the Tampa Bay Lightning. But he did sign a long-term deal to play here. Okay, so if he ended up getting a change of scenery, he could sign a long-term deal. My point here, Lou and Rick, okay, is I definitely believe that Juan Soto will be a Padre and he will be there a long time.
Oh, he should be, and I don't think he'd have any issue signing an extension. But Boras loves his guys to go to free agency. That's the kicker.
Sure. Well, look at Max Scherzer. I mean, Detroit Tigers had him, and I think he gave the Tigers a chance to go ahead and get him back. And he's had a lot of Tigers when Mike Ilitch was spending the money. He definitely recommended him. So the agent versus the team owner has a lot to do with
the agent. Freddie Freeman's a perfect example. It's not even a Boras guy, but Freddie Freeman would be in Atlanta right now if it wasn't for his agent.
Yeah.
So the agent has more control than the player. The player can tell you what they want, but the agent's going to make the best deal for the agent, usually, not necessarily the player. One more team here to take a look at that is in contention. They're 2.5 back of a wild card spot. No chance at their division, 16.5 back. They're sitting right at 48-48. San Francisco Giants. I think they're pretenders, but because of that 6th and final playoff spot, they do believe they can get in. And if you're within 2.5, 3 games, you're a believer at this point. So I don't blame them if they decide to try and go for it. They need outfield help. They need rotation help. They need bullpen help. They need infield help. They need a catcher. They need all sorts of stuff. The fact that they're 48-48 is actually very surprising to me. Do have some injuries, sure. Biggest thing, though, an outfielder and bullpen help. Scott, are the Giants a team that you think is going to make a lot of moves, mortgage the future they don't really have much of right now with a lot of aging players? Or do they kind of just sit back, see if they make it? If they don't, there's always next year.
Well, we know that they regressed because they had that monster year last year, neck and neck with the Dodgers. But I'm going to throw a hypothetical question at both of you guys, okay? What about Madison Bumgarner returning to the Giants? Do you think the Diamondbacks would go out there and move him?
They wouldn't move him. No one wants to take on his contract, though.
Okay,
it's way too much money.
I agree, but you never know. I mean, I've seen crazier things happen, but I think he's not going away anyhow. That's a name to throw out there, but they're going to get in, and it'll be one of those 1 versus 8 seasons. They'll be out right away anyway if they keep playing mediocre baseball. So I guess they'll just take the scrap heaps if they are contenders of what's left over, so to speak, on the second. And I should point out, folks, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Our next episode will be the trade. We'll be summing up a lot of the key trades. So we're looking forward to that. That's why we're setting the table here today to talk about next week, because then you guys can give us a report card. So there you go. There's a little teaser.
And
out
again, subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel. Visit www.southfloridatribune.com. Follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. You can advertise with us. Call 954-304-4941. And the audio portion of the show, of course, can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Back to the Giants here. I kind of see them maybe making a minor move here or there, but I think they're the type of team that's just going to kind of stand pat and not mortgage their future too much and kind of just say, hey, if we get hot, we have a good 2 weeks span, maybe win, 10 of 12, 10 of 13 games, we can still squeeze into the playoffs. And they do have Logan Webb. They do have Carlos Rodon. That's solid 1-2. It's not incredible, but it's good enough to win a playoff series if you get hot hitting, timely hitting, whatever it might be. So Giants, again, not a believer in them, but a team that could surprise some people. You guys have any thoughts on this San Francisco Giants team?
Yeah, they're pretenders to me. I think they should just wave the white flag, just see what they can do. They're not going to get hot. They've been, one of the big disappointing temes, but I mean, I didn't expect them to do anything last year. And then this year, I think people expect them to be good, and they're not. So I don't see them doing anything. I don't see them going to the playoffs. I don't see them doing anything, and I just think they're going to see what they can do next year.
Yeah,
that's what they should do.
I'll take a wait and see attitude. They could get in the playoffs, but they're not going very far. So we'll see. I mean, of all these teams that we're talking about getting in the playoffs, I certainly, I'm not a betting person anyways, but I certainly wouldn't be betting on the San Francisco Giants to get there. I just don't see it.
Yeah, well, we're talking about what looks like 8 teams in tonight, and 6 of those teams are going to get in. The Giants probably not going to be one of them, and then we're probably going to be looking at a team like the Phillies, Brewers, or Cardinals. One of those 3 teams would be the teams not to get in, and in my opinion, it's going to be the Phillies. But depends what they do. But yeah, the Giants are a long shot because not only do they need to play really good baseball, and I'm not sure they're capable of it, but to me, the Brewers and Cardinals are about to get better in the next week. And they're significantly better teams already.
Right. Dave Dombrowski is the X factor here for the Phillies. He's not afraid to make a deal if he has to. He's proven he'll do it before, and he'll do it again. And one thing I should point out, you never know. Maybe Phillies management may get a little impatient with Dave Dombrowski, thinking he had a much better team than he did. So
also keep in mind, though, and it's a big thing, strength of division, strength of schedule. It's a problem still until they fix it. Cardinals and Brewers get each other, but the rest, very easy going. Phillies, they get the Braves, they get the Mets, and they still have to deal with the Marlins, who aren't going to be a pushover. Yeah, they get Washington, but that's like getting Pittsburgh or Cincy or Chicago. There's 3 Washingtons in the Central. So that's where the Phillies are going to have it in tougher because they're going to have to go up against teams like the Braves and the Mets, who are about to get better too. And I'm not sure that they can do that. Can they win? If they play these teams 10 times, could they win 3 or 4 of them? Sure, but that's not going to get it done.
Well, the Marlins are interesting. And let's face the reality, before they went to the All-Star break, they had that they were outscored 16-1 by the Phillies during that 3-game series and 24-1 when you talk about the 8-0 loss.
No offense, Scott.
Right. Well, I know. I've been saying that all year.
Lineup, yeah.
The Marlins will go as far as their offense will take them, and it hadn't. So I think they're going to be the one team that when we talk about the biggest needs, that they'll between them, the Tigers, the Oakland A's, and the Pittsburgh Pirates, we'll see where all 4 of those teams blend in and where all these teams that you put together, Lou, benefit by a lot of these 4 teams. But I hope and pray the Marlins don't break this thing up. I really don't want to see it.
No, they're better off. They're better off trying to bring in some offense next offseason.
Yeah, I think so too.
Sticking with it, and even trading from some of the pitching depth they have. I'm not saying Lopez or Alcantara. I'm saying Rogers or some of the guys who haven't even come up to the big leagues yet. Well, trade from that. If you don't want to spend the money, trade from your pitching depth and bring in some more offense.
Well, Rogers is the guy they're talking about. You can't say Max Meyer. He could be headed toward Tommy John surgery from the latest reports there. But Rogers is another piece. I'm glad you brought it up, Lou, okay, is a guy that they're probably talking about possibly moving at another tough outing last night.
The problem with moving Rogers is you're selling incredibly low for a 24-year-old lefty that's a former first-round pick. Lopez, at least, you're going to get really good value for. Rogers, you're not going to get what you should be getting for. I wouldn't sell him at this point.
Yeah, but if you're going to sell him, I'm going to go back to what you just said, okay? Sell him for offense at least. That's all.
100%. 150%. That's it for me. I am going to turn it back over to you, Scott, and you wrap this up.
All right, Lou. Wonderful job as you always do. So with that said, you know what? I've said my piece all night, so I'm going to turn it over to Rick Curdy. Let everybody know how they get hold of you.
Well, you can find me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. We have a petition on there as we try to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte, North Carolina. So please sign. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB and Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Instagram at Charlotte Bats. I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curdy. And I'm also on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball. And if you have any comments or questions, you can email me at cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
All right, Lou, I know you have a lot of things that you want to promote. I know you do your own podcast and so forth, so take it away again, buddy.
Well, I am the content director of MLB and fantasy baseball content at drroto.com, where you can find my DFS podcast, my fantasy baseball podcast, my regular baseball podcast. Of course, you can find me here Tuesday nights. I do the Intentional Balk podcast with Mark Mancini. I have Counting Stats. I have the Lucas Baseball podcast, Sirius XM, Sports Byline USA, Armed Forces Network. And you can find me on Twitter at Landers Talks. You can find me on Facebook, Lou Landers. Always happy to talk sports, primarily baseball, football, and hockey. I'm not a huge basketball guy, but definitely happy to talk sports with you. And if you need some seasonal fantasy sports advice, you can come and find me.
All right, well done. I'll have to think about that in the fall, whether we bring on some fantasy or some football shows on the road, depending on your incredible demanding schedule for sure. So as Lou mentioned before, you can go ahead and subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Please do so. You can see us in action here as well. Also on you can find us on Twitter at Tribune South. Go to www.southfloridatribune.com. Lou Landers did an incredible job talking about the audio portion of the broadcast, but I'll mention it again anyways. When you lead off, I love the word lead off, especially when it comes to baseball, because it's so appropriate. Okay, but anyways, you can actually go ahead and find us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Google, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. So lots of different ways to get us. Tomorrow night on the Sports Exchange, Rick Curdy will be back on with myself, George Eichhorn, and JB Ellis, and we'll talk about some of the big headlines over the week. So have a lot of good stuff to do. And Lou, you and I are going to be in a couple of weeks doing a broadcast while I'm in Cooperstown, New York, the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I know that when we were chatting a little bit, you know how pumped I am. I'm really pumped. And here's a little interesting tidbit while I have you both on, that the Field of Dreams game is going to be played on August 11th, and we're going to be in Cooperstown to watch it. I don't know where I'm going to be, but when I was telling my Candy Ebling about it when we were over at the Field of Dreams, I said, I'm taking you to Cooperstown, New York, now that you've graduated, to go there from the Field of Dreams. So how ironic is it that we're going to be in Cooperstown, New York, to see a Field of Dreams game? And folks, we want to take a couple things out of this whole thing. Not only talk about trade deadlines, but think about what we talked about with the Hall of Fame people as well, because we've given you a lot to think about in this broadcast, more than just trade deadline, but Hall of Fame. And we're going to have a long time to debate the next candidate. So meanwhile, once again, Rick, outstanding job. Lou, what can I say? You do a great job as well. Me, I just happen to be part of this incredible team that I have with you guys. I'm only as good as what I have to work with. And I enjoy working with you guys. And you guys, to me, are the BEST, capitalize it, -8 at 48 point, whatever. Good enough. So anyways, on behalf of Rick Curdy and Lou Landers, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. We will see you next week, and have a good weekend. And we'll have some trade news to bring out there for you next Tuesday night. Good night, everybody.
Good night.